Every time a ceasefire is announced, somewhere on Wall Street, an alarm goes off. Not a celebration, a panic. Because peace is the one thing the defense industry cannot afford. When peace breaks out, defense stocks crash and boardrooms panic. This is not conspiracy. This is not theory. This is publicly available stock market data that anyone can verify in 30 seconds. Peace kills profits. Today, we are going to follow the money through the darkest corridor of modern capitalism, where war is not failure, it is the product. Where peace is not the goal, it is the threat. And the companies profiting from all of it, they are not hiding. They are publicly traded, right there on the stock exchange, ticker symbols and all. The peace problem. Think about what peace really means for a moment. For most of us, it means safety, stability, children growing up without the sound of bombs overhead. But for a very specific corner of the global economy, peace means something entirely different. Lost contracts, cancelled orders, plummeting revenue. War is a racket. It always has been. That was Major General Smedley Butler speaking, the most decorated Marine in American history at the time of his death. Not some conspiracy theorist or internet blogger. A man who saw the machine from the inside and blew the whistle back in 1935. The defense industry is the only industry that needs human conflict to survive. And this is the fundamental contradiction nobody wants to address. We have built a global economic system where some of the most powerful and politically connected corporations on Earth have a direct financial incentive for war to never end. Conflict equals revenue, not in theory, not in some abstract sense, in quarterly earnings reports, in shareholder dividends, in stock prices that surge every single time a missile is launched. But here is the thing, you do not have to take my word for it. The stock market tells this story every single day. Stock market proof. Here is something you can do right now. Open any stock tracking app. Search for Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, or General Dynamics. Now look at February 24th, 2022, the day Russia invaded Ukraine. Skyrocketed. Lockheed Martin surged from $386 to over $480 in weeks. Northrop Grumman jumped nearly 40% in the months following. RTX climbed steadily as Javelin missiles flew off the production line. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. But in the defense sector, patience simply means waiting for the next conflict. Now flip the script. In 2018, when Trump met Kim Jong-un and peace seemed possible on the Korean peninsula, defense stocks dipped immediately. In 2020, when the US announced withdrawal from Afghanistan, the exact same pattern emerged. Peace rises, profits fall. Every peace negotiation is a direct financial threat to weapons manufacturers. This is not opinion or interpretation. This is the stock market, the most brutally honest mechanism in capitalism, telling you exactly who benefits from what. In the short run, the market is a voting machine. But in the long run, it is a weighing machine. And the market has weighed in. War pays. And it gets much worse when you see how much money flows into ensuring those profits never stop. War as product. Let us be very precise about what we are discussing here. We are not talking about soldiers. We are not talking about the men and women who risk their lives for their countries. We are talking about the corporations that build the weapons those soldiers carry. War is a product. In 2023, global military spending hit a record $4 trillion. The United States alone accounted for over $900 billion, and the top 5 defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, RTX, Northrop Grumman, Boeing Defense, and General Dynamics, brought in combined revenues exceeding $180 billion. These are numbers so large they lose all meaning. So let me frame it differently. The defense industry earns more annually than the entire GDP of most nations on Earth. If this is making you see the world differently right now, hit like and subscribe, because we are just getting started. As the political philosopher Hannah Arendt warned us, the sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. These companies do not see themselves as villains. They are simply chasing quarterly targets. But those targets require conflict to be met. And when conflict does not arise naturally, the system has sophisticated ways of making sure it appears. That machine is our next stop, the lobby machine. In 2023 alone, the defense industry spent over $140 million on lobbying in Washington. $140 million. That money buys access. It buys influence. And most importantly, it buys votes on defense budgets. Defense contractors spend millions to guarantee that billions keep flowing back. Think about the return on investment here. Spend $140 million on lobbying and secure contracts worth hundreds of billions. That is a return that would make any venture capitalist weep with envy. We have the best government money can buy. Lockheed Martin alone spent over $12 million lobbying Congress in a single year. RTX spent over $8 million. But here is the genius part. Jobs in every district. These companies strategically place facilities in nearly every congressional district in America. Not by accident, by meticulous design. If a congressman votes to cut defense spending, they are voting to eliminate jobs in their own backyard. Try winning re-election after doing that. Designed, as President Eisenhower himself warned in his farewell address. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. He saw it coming in 1961. He warned an entire nation on live television, and we completely ignored him. The system is engineered so that opposing the war machine means opposing your own constituents, and the lobbying is only the beginning. Wait until you see who is actually making the decisions. Fear for sale. You cannot sell weapons without fear. And fear does not just appear naturally at convenient budget cycles. It is manufactured. Every time defense contractors need a new budget approved, a new threat materializes on the horizon. Always imminent, always growing, always requiring more weapons to counter. During the Cold War, it was the Soviets. After 2001, it was terrorism. Now it is China and the Indo-Pacific. The enemy rotates, but the spending only ever goes up. 1. Soviet threat justified trillions in nuclear arms. 2. The war on terror generated over $8 trillion in spending. 3. The China pivot is now fueling the next weapons boom. 4. Each new threat conveniently replaces the last. Fear is the single most profitable product the defense industry has ever created. They do not need you to actively support war. They just need you afraid enough not to question the budget. As the political analyst Noam Chomsky observed, the general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know that it doesn't know. Your taxes, their profits. Every dollar of your taxes that flows to defense is a dollar that does not go to healthcare, education, or crumbling infrastructure. But you will never hear it framed that way on television, because the people selling you the fear are the same people profiting from the spending, and many of them used to wear uniforms. That connection is where things get truly dark. The revolving door. There is a door in Washington that never stops spinning. On one side, the Pentagon. On the other, defense contractor boardrooms. And the same people walk through it year after year after year. Pentagon to boardroom. Retired generals become defense company consultants. Former defense secretaries join the boards of Raytheon and Boeing. Pentagon officials who approved multi-billion-dollar weapons programs take executive positions at the very companies that received those contracts. The people who decide where your tax dollars go end up working for the companies that receive them. In 2021, a comprehensive investigation found that over 670 former senior government officials had taken positions with the top 20 defense contractors in just the previous 5 years. 670 people who swore to serve the public interest, now serving shareholder interest. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. He saw it coming in 1961. He named it on national television, and we did absolutely nothing. From uniforms to business suits, from public service to shareholder returns. The revolving door ensures that the interests of defense corporations and the interests of defense policy are never truly separate. But everything we have discussed so far is the domestic side. When this machine goes global, the picture becomes infinitely darker. Proxy war profits. Here is something that should genuinely keep you awake at night. The United States is the world's largest arms exporter, and many of those weapons have ended up in the hands of groups that later became America's enemies. The Mujahideen in Afghanistan received American Stinger missiles in the 1980s to fight the Soviets. Some of those fighters later became the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Saddam Hussein received American intelligence and weapons during the Iran-Iraq War. And years later, those same capabilities were pointed directly at American soldiers in the Gulf. Arming today's ally who becomes tomorrow's enemy is not a bug in the system, it is the feature. Because every new enemy that emerges from yesterday's arms deal becomes the perfect justification for tomorrow's even larger defense budget. As George Orwell wrote with almost prophetic clarity, the war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. Arm, destroy, rebuild, repeat. Saudi Arabia alone purchased over $100 billion in American weapons. Those weapons have been used in Yemen, creating one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes of the 21st century. But the contracts were honored. The shareholders were compensated, and the cycle continued without pause. The military-industrial complex cannot sustain itself alone, however. It needs a crucial partner, and that partner is broadcasting directly into your living room right now. Media complicity. Turn on any major news network during a military conflict. Count the retired generals and former defense officials presented to you as neutral experts. The people explaining war on your television often profit directly from that war continuing. In 2003, during the build-up to the Iraq invasion, major American networks paraded dozens of military analysts before cameras night after night. What they consistently failed to disclose was that many of these analysts had active financial ties to defense contractors. They were not objective commentators. They were salespeople wearing medals. The media does not report on war objectively. It markets war to the public, and it works brilliantly because conflict is extraordinary television. Fear keeps viewers glued to screens. Viewership keeps advertisers paying premium rates. The legendary journalist Edward R. Murrow saw this trajectory decades before it fully materialized. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. The defense industry understood this equation perfectly. Control the narrative, and you control the budget. Control the narrative. Make people believe every threat is existential, and they will never question the spending. As the media theorist Marshall McLuhan observed, the medium is the message, and the message has been unwavering for decades. Be afraid, spend more, ask fewer questions. If you think this is only an American phenomenon, what comes next will completely reshape your perspective. The global game. This is not merely an American problem. The global arms trade is an interconnected web linking every major power on Earth. Britain, France, Russia, China, Israel, all of them are active and willing players in this game. Every major nation on Earth profits from selling the instruments of destruction. Russia sells weapons to India. China arms Pakistan. France equips Egypt. Britain supplies Saudi Arabia. And when those weapons are deployed in conflicts that displace millions of civilians, those same selling nations then debate immigration policy as if they played no role whatsoever in creating the crisis. Bombs destroy homes. Destroyed homes create refugees. Refugees create political instability. Political instability justifies more military spending. The circle closes perfectly every single time. In war, truth is the first casualty. The global defense industry functions like a cartel. Supposedly rival nations attend the same arms exhibitions, share technology through back channels, and compete for the same clients over dinner. Different flags, same game. The annual global arms trade exceeds $200 billion. That money does not want peace. It structurally cannot afford peace. And it will invest heavily to ensure peace remains perpetually just out of reach. But this brings us to the most important question of all: breaking the cycle. So what do we do with this knowledge? How do you fight a system that has been carefully engineered to perpetuate itself across decades and administrations? The first step to breaking any cycle is recognizing that the cycle exists. And now you can see it clearly. Defense stocks crash when peace breaks out. 140 million in lobbying secures hundreds of billions in contracts. The revolving door spins between the Pentagon and corporate boardrooms. Fear is manufactured on schedule to justify spending on cue. See question, act. The defense industry is counting on your apathy. It is counting on you scrolling past this and forgetting by tomorrow morning. It is counting on you believing this is simply too massive to change. But here is what genuinely terrifies them. An informed citizenry that asks one devastating question before every conflict. As the philosopher Voltaire once challenged the powerful, it is dangerous to be right in matters on which the established authorities are wrong. Who profits? Who profits? That single question has more power than any weapon ever manufactured. Because when enough people start asking it, when enough people start following the money before following the flags, the entire architecture begins to crack. They need your ignorance. They need your silence. They need you to believe that peace is too complicated to achieve. It is not. Peace is remarkably simple. It is just terrible for business. Today we followed the money through the darkest corridor of modern capitalism. We watched stock prices celebrate war and mourn peace. We witnessed $4 trillion in annual military spending, 140 million in lobbying, 670 former officials spinning through the revolving door, and a global arms trade worth over $200 billion that needs conflict the way fire needs oxygen. Money fuels war. This is not conspiracy theory. This is publicly available data. Earnings reports, stock charts, lobbying disclosures, congressional records, all of it sitting right there in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots. As the ancient philosopher Plato once wrote, only the dead have seen the end of war. But perhaps if enough of us follow the money, if enough of us ask who profits before asking who to blame, we can prove Plato wrong. Knowledge is the first crack in the machine. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. If you made it this far, comment stock ticker to prove you followed the money all the way to the truth. Every government lies. The question is, what are they lying about? The truth is out there. You just have to follow the money. Subscribe if you want to keep digging.